This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes, as well as some of the challenges they faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. Have you ever wondered what sets successful businesses apart from the rest? The answer is quite simple. It's the people. Designing a recruitment process that can identify the most talented, driven, and culturally aligned individuals is crucial for any business. In today's episode, we'll be joined by Fletcher Wimbush, the founder and CEO of Discovered Performance Hiring Software. Discovered Performance Hiring Software is a combination of smart software tools, AI, and human hiring coaches to make solving the toughest hiring challenges easy. Fletcher will take us through his journey of getting into the recruitment industry while building several successful businesses along the way. You'll learn why finding the right people for your business is critical for its success, discover tools that can help you assess candidates for integrity and cultural fit, and stick around for some helpful tips for finding new talent. Let's jump in. Hi, Fletcher. Thank you so much for joining me on The Bottom Line today.
Savan, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Now, off mic, we had a bit of a chat. You do have a not an Aussie accent. Tell us, where are you now? Where are you recording from?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California. I always tell people, I live near Disneyland right now. The greater Los Angeles, Orange County, Surf City, USA, Huntington Beach. I live real close to there. And, anybody who's been to Disneyland in Anaheim, we're also not too far from there.
It's a great place of the world. I do have some family in Los Angeles, so I can attest to having, walked the sands of Huntington Beach, and very, very lucky place to be living in.
I have my own Australian connection we haven't talked about yet, but my father's Australian. And my entire father's side of the family, they live in Australia. So I have my own little Australian connection. All my friends growing up always were like, I love your dad's accent, right? I didn't get any of it though.
There you go. And look, let's dive deep into your background. So you've got multiple businesses in human resources, but take us back before business and how you sort of got into business, how you got into human resources, talent acquisition, all those things. But let's get to know you a little bit more.
Well, I bring up my father because he was the greatest influence in my life, and I get to spend every day with him. He passed almost 11 years ago, and through his journey in life, ultimately became a business consultant, management consultant, and in that journey, he created a number of talent assessments. So behavioral, aptitude, emotional intelligence, and probably most importantly, attitude and integrity assessments to help him in his consulting practice. Give that to his business leaders, CEOs, to better understand them and help guide them in their journey of self-discovery and improvement, become better leaders and run better businesses. But very quickly, that became about selection. I found myself in leadership roles in a young age, captain of the football team, student body president, and supervisor at every job that I had. And, for better or worse, they put me in these roles. And I really gravitated to the concept of you get the right people on the bus, good things are going to happen in your organization, whatever it is, business or for fun, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, you do have a few businesses. You've got applicant tracking system, Discovered ATS. Could you please explain a little bit what that is? What are the core services you provide? It's a really interesting business there.
Well, I appreciate that. It's part of this journey. These assessment tools my father created. That was something that 11 years ago when we started on this journey, that was our core business. And it was a small business, and very quickly found that our clients were bringing us people, 3-4 candidates, and none of them were really worthy of being hired. And that's, a painful situation to be in. You spent whatever couple of weeks, months finding, interviewing, hopefully checking their references, maybe giving them an assessment to basically come to the conclusion that you probably shouldn't hire this person. So in those early days in my previous life, I had the opportunity to work for a really large, well-run, privately held organization. They introduced me to people like Lou Adler or Mark Murphy or the top grading guys, if anybody's familiar, or who, or any of these other, some of these different ideas or thought leaders out there in that space. And I dove into those. And because this was my passion, I was committed to learning from these people and then practicing what they did. So I shared these ideas with folks. And that spun out a retained search business. I wasn't a big fan of the traditional contingency model, and we can talk about that for another hour if you like. But well, but ultimately, it's been our journey. Say, we want to solve the whole problem for people, and so Discovered was born out of that. Right? We want to help people attract and assess and evaluate, and on the back end, to create a strong performance management process to help engage and keep high performers engaged in the business, right?
Oh, well, let's start there. So the backbone of businesses are people. If you've got the right people, good things happen. And obviously leadership is a key element to that as well. But you got to have good people to start with. So there's a saying here in Australia, is hire slowly, fire quickly. And the part around hiring slowly is about making sure you get the right person. So what are the tips do you have, or what are some of these assessment tools that you provide? Because I feel like in Australia, the way that it works, and I'm sure it's similar to America, is you put an ad out or through LinkedIn, through the online platforms where people search, or through recruitment agencies, and you shortlist through a resume, you do some interviews. But in that 1 hour, multiple interviews, you could have some group stuff. It's very, very difficult to really figure out whether that person's the right fit. There's some leading questions you can ask and so on. Before we get into your businesses that you have, let's talk about hiring and your tips around how we make that process efficient so the business owner is successful in hiring the right people.
Well, as I've mentioned, I've spent literally my whole life. So I'm 41, and since I was 16, I've thought about this. I even had to write a paper to graduate high school. I chose this topic. So I spent my whole life thinking about it and practicing this. And it really comes down to there's 4 areas of getting it right. You got to get the fundamentals, the framework, foundation of the job and the structure of how you're going to go about and find and assess this person. You got to attract the right people. That's a little bit about, you mentioned, obviously job ads in these different places and techniques and 20 different things that you can do there and mistakes you can make along those lines. And you have a good candidate evaluation process and then training and onboarding. There's about 40 different things that you need to do correctly. I always joke with people, say, look, if we can do about half of those things right, then you're going to greatly improve the chances of success. But most people fail at the first step, creating what Lou Adler calls a performance-based job description, one that clearly defines what's expected of the person on the job in measurable terms. More often than not, and some of the people listening to this have been guilty of this, and I won't hold it against you too much because I did it once or twice in my early days as a leader, but they say, I need to hire a salesperson, and they go online to Indeed or Seek Out, and they go find a competitor's job advertisement or whatever you want to call it, because what's out there is not a job description, by the way. Like, do not post your job descriptions when you're marketing, when you're trying to attract people. Nobody wants to read that. It's important, but it's not what you lead with. And they steal that and they sort of maybe massage it more half-heartedly, like, oh, that looks kind of about right, sounds right. And it's usually a bunch of nonsensical words that are saying like drive sales results or, increase the bottom line or drive profit or make cold calls. Like, you've just said if you think about that, a whole lot of nothing.
Okay, that's true.
There's nothing measurable about that. Nothing about that says, hey, this is what the outcome of those actions are, or how much of those actions, or how much of your time is going to be spent focused on which parts of those activities, right? So I think that's a big piece of it. So we often, especially in small businesses and even and even large organizations, there's not a lot of clarity around what are the key activities that are going to drive success in the role. And it's a kind of a vague, like, I'll know it when I see it kind of thing, right? And they run off and they post ads on Indeed and LinkedIn and Seek and go call recruiters and say, send me sales candidates. And recruiters get mad at them because I sent you a perfect sales candidate. This isn't the one. And they're like, why? It fits everything you told me, right? And you're like, but this, that, another. Well, why didn't we discuss that when we started this project? Frankly, is just one of the key things. And it's the biggest mistake people make.
Let's talk about your business. Like I said, you've got multiple little things that you're doing. Integrity First is one of them, and it's facts-driven performance hiring, which is what you've sort of talked about. Can you explain Integrity First, what it is, and the business, what it is, and how companies are using the tool to create more secure and productive that work environment?
As I mentioned way earlier in this, an attitude and integrity, I think, is the cornerstone. I mean, look, that's the one place you don't want to make a mistake. Warren Buffett famously quoted, hire for three things: integrity, intelligence, and motivation. And if they're lacking the first thing, then the other two will kill you. So really smart, motivated people will find a way to screw you. But Integrity First is interesting. 40-year-old product, been out there. I acquired it about 2 years ago, and because it just fit our, who we are so well in our suite of 30 other types of assessments that we offer. And I love this product. It's really geared for frontline workers. So in mining and construction, healthcare, in-home health, senior living, hospitality, warehouse logistics. So those types of workforces. And it's a 7-minute assessment that simply evaluates candidates for some really fundamental integrity things. Now, first and foremost is lying. So don't hire liars. We've all had liars in our life at some point, probably even at work, sometimes in our personal lives. And, there's nothing worse than a liar. But also drug addicts, thieves, and people who have hostile behaviors, right? And so those other three obviously are pretty dangerous. But yeah, so it simply screens for those. It has 1.5 million data points. In 2020, had a 550,000 data point scientific journal article published with it. And it lowers safety incidents by 48%. The severity of those incidents, 19%. Here in the US, we often refer to as workers' compensation claims. Really all over. If your insurance rates go down or up, and especially if you're in a construction or mining or anywhere, government contracts where they really regulate, if have a history of unsafe business practices, you won't get contracts, or your insurance rates go up. It makes it difficult to compete for contracts, private or public sector, right? So it's has a big deal there. Probably most importantly for me, it lowers turnover by 30% with a class of workers that is historically very, very high.
Now, I want to ask you, the process, obviously, we talked about getting the right job ad and making sure that, you're clear in terms of what the position description is, what success might look like. But then we have to go out and market that. And we get candidates. How do you sift through resumes? What's your tip? So we're actually going to put an ad out soon. We've hopefully done the first part right. And I think I'm going to learn a little bit from today's episode. But some roles, we can get some seriously high numbers of applicants. So what's your tip to our business owners that might get, say, 100 applicants? How do they sift through those resumes to match it to the candidate, in essence, what they're looking for?
Look, I mean, Pete, and I asked this to business owners, like, if I brought you 300 applicants in 30 days, would you love me or you hate me? And it always perplexes me. They say, I hate you. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, you should be saying the opposite. You should love me. I understand. I now create another problem. Most people are like, I can't get anybody to apply, right? And that's a whole nother problem. Now you go pay a recruiter $30,000, $40,000 to go find them for you. Like, oh my God. And I own a recruiting agency and I don't like recruiters. So, because I feel your pain, like that's a big bill. So no, you should be in love with that. But look, you got to make it, in my opinion, is the most important thing in your business. It really only takes 10 or 15 minutes a day. That's the first step, is just commit to spending, say, 15 minutes a day to review those resumes. You're going to get pretty good at it. Now, if you've done the first thing I said, get really clear in your head about the measurable expectations, it makes it a lot easier to evaluate those resumes because you have a crystal clear idea of what you're looking for on that resume, what kind of work experience, what kind of outcomes that they've produced, what kind of behaviors or qualities that you might be able to sort of deduce from those resumes, especially if you're looking for folks that maybe don't have direct experience in your world and you're looking for sort of parallel experiences and you think you're gonna hire for attitude. To this day and age, I am still big on job stability, man. One of the most effective evaluation tools is references from previous direct supervisors. This was back in the early days, and I would assess their candidates, and we give their candidates an hour, hour and a half long assessment. And it comes back red, red, don't hire, bad, 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 bad. And they'd be like, oh my God, I love this person. Like, I've been through 3 interviews with them and blah, blah, blah. They're so amazing. And say, send me their resume. And they send me their resume, and the person can't keep a job for longer, maybe more than a year or two max. And then I ask you, Saban, how long do you want somebody to work for you?
A long time, as long as they can.
Yeah, probably longer than 2 years, I would hope, right? Because, your business is not simple, right? Like, it's going to take you a year just to get them to figure out where the water cooler's at, right? And then maybe in year 2, they might begin to produce some real quality work. And if you're a Malcolm Gladwell fan, like I am, 10,000 hours to excellence, how many hours does it take to get there in the working world?
That was my question around resumes where candidates have moved a lot. And depending, let's say they've got 10 years experience and they've had 4 jobs, averaging roughly that 2 to 3 years, you kind of wonder, is it because they outgrew the business, or is it because the business outgrew them? And the candidate can come across really well, but you always have this weird feeling in your gut that says someone's great and there's connection and everything's going well. Why didn't this work out? I wouldn't call it a divorce, but how many times can you not work out before, is this going to work out?
Yeah, exactly. And it almost doesn't matter the reason. Now, a good resume means in the tech and the startup world, people move around a lot. And look, there's no hard and fast rules here, but go through that mental gymnastics, because you will see people who are elevating their careers. They're moving from one job and they're elevating. They go up and up and up and up and up the ladder. And if you do take the time to speak with them, you might find out that their boss is pulling them from job to job to job to job. That's a really good sign, right? Like, they had a boss who loved them so much that when they moved to their next thing, they brought them with them, they brought them with them, they brought them with them. And hey, that's a different story, but you might also be having a thought, can I give this person enough reach? Can I give them, stretch their skills enough? Or if I am going to hire them, how do I get them to hit the ground running, have them add the most amount of value, and assume they're only going to be here for 2 years? You might have a hot shot, a hired gun, on your hands, and that might be what you need. Again, hopefully defined well by your job description, right? And so there's no one size fits all to that, but generally it's a bad sign. Very rarely do you see a resume like that. It's usually lateral move, changing career paths, changing jobs, changing industries, and forget it. Like, again, there's no way they ever got good at anything, frankly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We do, when we look through the resumes, that's something that we kind of keep an eye on. What about things people do outside of work? How important is someone having a hobby other than going to the movies, reading a book, going for a run? Like, how important is there to have a special person that does something a bit different? Do you get deep into that, into the interview questions? Is that one of the boxes that you're assessing a candidate on?
With young candidates, for sure, actually. Kids that are coming out of high school or college, or recently 2 or 3 years into their career, right? There's not a lot to go off of. And kids, they call them kids, young men and women, 24, 25, 26 years old. They probably do have some instability in their work history. They were a server. They, ran valet, or they did some entry-level jobs. And obviously, I'm not holding that against them in their collegiate career, but the one was a college athlete, and who ran track. That shows there's a lot of commitment to a very difficult endeavor that required them to balance their schooling, their home, personal lives, these other, so yeah, I think that has a lot to say about an individual who is a busybody. Back in my dish machine commercial autoclarer days, we didn't talk about, but we look for activity. I look for people whose legs shake in interviews.
Oh, wow.
Have you met those people? I think sometimes I'm one of them. When you meet somebody and they're like legs going like this.
Yeah, they're fidgeting. Yeah,
they're fidgeting. Yeah, it's called high activity. They're just people like they're ready to go. And they don't sit still very well. So what do? They go have hobbies. They're surfers and kiteboarders and skydivers and golfers and football players. They're got to keep moving.
And in terms of your profiling, what tips can you give to people that interview in a resume face to face? Is there any sort of tips you can give around profiling? Like we've done some training around disc profile and getting to understand without testing, without having to do a test. Do you think that's important, getting in a feel for the personality of the person, or is that something you recommend that you should always get a test done to understand the attributes of the personality?
We offer a work styles discover disc assessment, and we encourage that for a team building, communications, emotional intelligence building type of purpose. There are different versions of that for hiring. Look, if you've never done it, you haven't practiced it, you don't that familiar with it, you don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Absolutely, a test is crucial, right? Because you're just not trained for that. My father, early on, when I was like the first guinea pig, I'm taking these assessments at like 7 years old and throughout my whole life, right? But this always stuck with me. He said, every person you meet, put them in a box. Are they a D, an I, a C, an S, right? You're not like trying to be judgmental about it. It was a mental exercise. Can I meet Savan and say like, hey, he is a high C, high D kind of guy. I'm just guessing because you're an accountant and you're a partner. But so now I have enough experience. Like you could just tell me your job and I could probably tell you where you're at in the thing, right? But that might help you better understand, well, how I might better communicate with him. Also might help me better understand the person's natural preferences toward or away from certain types of activities. And there are certain jobs this becomes super important in, like hiring an accountant. Like they better be super conscientious, right? Like don't hire an I as an accountant unless they're the partner of the firm and they're never going to do any accounting and they're out there generating revenue, right? And I've met some. And so they're qualified, they've got the education, they've done the work, they've gone through the big four, they're totally competent, but they're better suited to generate revenue and leverage all that skill set that they develop versus doing the work themselves.
What's your view around cultural fit? Sometimes there's been candidates where we love them. They're skilled. They've got all the things that you would need in terms of their personality, their resume, well, not personality, but you just feel like culturally they just don't fit. They may not be the right person that just doesn't fit. Do you still recommend to hire people that might tick all the boxes in getting the job done, but you think that they're not 100% the cultural fit?
Look, it's always a tough one. So I believe in structured interviews and candidate scorecards. So those are two of the top most predictive things you can do, by the way. Integrity test is in the top 6 things that you can do to predict success. And this is Phil Sack. I literally have his paper on my desk right now. Just did a meta-analysis, all these things. So the top IO psychologists in the world, when it comes to this stuff, by the way, this is what he's found through his research. So look, usually part of that is, some different types of scorecard items and a structured set of interview questions to help you evaluate for whether or not that person is going to be a culture fit. And they need to be structured and you need to have scorecard items because oftentimes we don't even know what our own culture is, or it's not very well defined, or we don't live our own core values. And so this is a way to help us do live them more, B, define them more, to remind us ourselves of what these things are. Yes, I think it has a place, when it comes to age, sex, religion, things like that. I've loved assessments for that. I mean, I've literally hired almost every type you could imagine. You pick the box that's there. We've personally hired that. And I think assessments have been a great way for us because we use them right in the beginning of the process. Oftentimes we won't even talk to somebody until they complete them to say, hey, wow, this person's just is a perfect personality match, has great integrity and attitude. Their resume is spot on. They're intelligent and they have a high emotional intelligence. Those are the things that we're looking for a fundamental match. We haven't even seen the color of their skin or the tone of their voice or know anything about their sexual preference. I mean, you name it. I've got a neurally diverse guy on my team for the last, 2.5 years, one of the funnest people you ever meet, right? So that was a tough one for me. Usually those things don't matter to me. To me, culture is beyond those demographic things, right? It's beyond that, right? Now, I will say this, your gut cannot tell you yes to a hire, in my opinion. People fall in love or like people for the strangest of reasons, and 54% of marriages end in divorce, right? But I think there is a place to say your gut can tell you no. And if I just don't like you, then I should not hire you. And if I can't explain it, it doesn't matter. I should just not hire.
Looking ahead, what are your predictions for the future of recruitment and its impact on creating a good company environment?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a lot of the same. Most people are going to be winging it like they've always had. It is the most important thing a leader can do. I think you talk to any of the gurus, you pick the name, they're all going to say it's about the quality of the people that you put on the team, right? I think most business owners are too consumed. Business leaders, large companies are too consumed with the activities that they're doing on a day in and day out basis to spend their time to commit to becoming excellent at talent selection. I don't see how that changes a lot. I'm hoping with AI and one of the things we've done with the Discover platform is just inject AI into as much of it as possible just to make it easier to do. So I think with the technology side, I think we're going to see a lot of great things that are going to help aid hiring managers and help them make the mistakes. And the way we built all our companies is we educate first, and then we give you tools to make doing it easier. And so I'd like to believe that hopefully, the new class of tools are going to complement that, and we'll see.
That was sort of my next question around AI. You've got Kingsley AI. What does that do? And talk a little bit about AI and in that hiring recruitment place, just so we can get a feel for what the future might look like and how currently you're supporting your clients with AI.
Well, so starting from the beginning, I say I got to create performance-based job description, right? Well, that can be a daunting. Savon, go do it. Go write one right now, right? How long is that going to take you to do? Where are you going to begin?
I'd probably delegate it to someone that can do it better than me, but I don't know, a while, probably a few hours, a couple of hours.
And that's if you really are committed to doing it, right? Because you're probably just like, well, I'm going to delegate it to the intern, and then they're going to give it to me, and I'm going to maybe tweak it a little bit. And it's good enough because I got to move forward in life, right? And that's fair. I get it. That's just fact of life, right? So step one, AI is fantastic, right? It's better than an intern. In about a minute, we can write a performance-based job description for your tax partner or your accountant or you're there. And all you got to fill in is the numbers now. Because, it's not going to know what metrics to put in exactly, right? But we'll give it to you. It'll be must close the books every month by the second day of the month with 0 errors, blah, 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 right? Pick a number, and all you got to do is just add the numbers in the X's, Y's, and the Z's, right? So I think it's really great for that. It's really fantastic for advertising your jobs. We send links to clients and they send that to their employees and themselves. In 5 minutes, we do a little interview with their existing people. We run it through Descript, which is all AI powered, creates beautiful transcripts. Then that goes right into the AI to say, hey, now create me a job description, a job advertisement to help me promote this, and 20 days worth of social content that I can post out that goes into my employee referral program. So I can send an email to my entire team, say, hey, do you know a great bookkeeper? And it's an interesting set of information with quotes from people who work here and quotes from the CEO about the mission, the vision, and boom, it's all done. 5 minutes of our client's time, right? Now they have a world-class recruitment marketing stack. Interview questions, right? Candidate scorecards. I don't know where to begin. I got my job description. Now I need to create a candidate scorecard. Boom. You can create literally everything you need to market and evaluate your candidates leveraging AI in a matter of minutes. And that's one of the things we did with Discovered is each one of these steps, okay, AI can help you with that. AI can help you with that. And boy, it levels up the quality of work that you've done for yourself. And at this point, we're at 70% accuracy in being able to evaluate a resume against a well-written job description. And that will soon be 90%. And then AI will be taking over a lot of this piece. It's also creating custom assessments at a world-class level already. So my tax and accounting clients, there's not a great inventory of tax and accounting assessments out there. Blockchain, we did this for a development company developing a blockchain. There's no blockchain development assessment. Leveraging AI, we created these assessments, gave them to subject matter experts, and they were change that question, and it's perfect. 99% perfect. And an expert finished the job, and boom, now you have a tool to assess for a niche skill.
Now, my last question is, what is your favorite interview question to ask a candidate?
Well, I only have 2, but my favorite one is, Savon, it was the reference. I call it the reference question. This comes from Top Grading Torque. If you guys we're checking out, But it's simply, who was your previous supervisor at your last job? So-and-so, great. What's their name? Can you spell it? Great. Later in this process, can I get them on the phone and speak with them for a couple of minutes? It's a yes or no question. It should be obvious, but you'll get every answer under the sun about reasons why you can or cannot, or they don't work here anymore, HR has a policy against it, or whatever. It's simply a yes or no question. The secret is just the follow up to all of that. But so I would encourage you, for time's sake, to watch our YouTube videos. We have an ebook on the subject, or read the 400-page top grading book. I mean, just spend time mastering this one interview question, and you will save yourself years of heartache and millions of dollars in lost productivity.
Well, Fletcher, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. It was fascinating to hear your insights and expertise. Thank you once again for taking the time and joining all the way from Los Angeles. I really want to say thank you again and look forward to seeing you online.
Always a pleasure. Likewise.
This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952, and we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Savan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.